Welcome to the show, Living with Climate Change. My name is Paul Eastman, and welcome back to the show. I haven't made a show in over a year. I've been busy working as a teacher and just hadn't had the time or the inclination to make a show, which I feel like I'd like to get back to it. I have not working, I have time on my hands. Be a little bit looser kind of show, I think, and I may just have some fun with it and probably talk about myself more because it's kind of I found this show is good for me to work things out. In your mind, when you share, uh, it's helpful. But maybe similar to, I've heard some interviews with authors, writers that sometimes they started their first books and things. They would say, I wrote this for myself and didn't expect anybody to read it, things like that. I'm not really a writer. I wish I was. I'd write a book. But I've tried and I'm not, I'm not a writer. Uh, so when I, so let's, the purpose of this show, why I started it was what's now called climate trauma or eco trauma. And I think that now we see that this is in the mainstream and talks about it a lot. Uh, I think I started the show 3 years ago, maybe three. I have to look. I think it's probably 3 years ago, and things were so much different, at least in the media. It just was right before climate change became more widespread. At that time, I mean, they didn't even mention it. Networks were told to not even say anything about it, things like that. Greta Thunberg had not started her activism and all these things. So that's one reason I stopped doing the show. I didn't think the need of it because there's so much about climate change is out there. So anyway, that's why I started it. And today's topic, I think, is an important one that is not, well, it is addressed, but I wanted to work it out for myself. And it's about doomerism, okay? Being a doomer and having these apocalyptic views. And I think that's even kind of gone, uh, it's kind of like gone mainstream. Uh, uh, I just, because, I saw this new film, Don't Look Up, the new Hollywood film, which is fun. If you haven't seen it, I mean, obviously I'd see it. Uh, Meryl Streep is in it, and Leonardo DiCaprio, and a lot of stars. And it's kind of this apocalyptic doomer version, but of course it's about an asteroid coming. It's going to hit the Earth in 6 months. So it's a little different than climate change, but it was symbolic of that. We have Greta Thunberg and you've got a lot of there's a lot of emotionalism in the climate change. I've heard reports that young people are having depression or having this climate trauma because of the future projections of the world that we live in, what's going to happen. So on today's show, I want to just talk a little bit about this phenomenon of doomerism, or being a doomer, or looking at the world in this way. And because I've fallen into it, I found myself recently kind of fallen into this. But this movie, Don't Look Up, when it's put out there like that, it made me reevaluate my views of things. I've always on this show, I try to be balanced and not alarmist about everything like that. But our minds run, and I go back and forth because it's obviously climate change is a very serious threat to us now and in the future. I mean, we've seen all the extreme weather that's happened, especially at least it's reportedly in the United States. Anyway, I think we all know that. But let's look at now, what is doomer? A doomer, I'm sure you've seen maybe some of the shows about climate change, and that are they kind of doomer people, but it's just basically no hope. There's nothing we can do about climate change with renewable energy, or our lifestyles, cutting back, technology, CO2 is extracting CO2 from the atmosphere, geoengineering, all this stuff, that nothing's going to work, and it's over, and we are doomed, and we'll probably go extinct. And just the future is terrible, and there's just no hope, and it's an extreme would be maybe Guy McPherson that projects that everyone will be dead by 2026, in 4 years. Now, how can he possibly think that? Intelligent man like that. He was on the show. I actually got to interview him, but he's still, I think, clinging to this. So that's an extreme. He's a nice guy, and but I don't know why I just can't understand why he thinks that it's going to be that soon that the entire planet would go human extinction that soon. But anyway, and so this could lead to activism, activists just giving up, not trying to save energy or pollute or use plastic, or you just say it's just completely over, and it's going to be like Mad Max. Anyway, so any version of this, I think, can lead to depression. Obviously, I mean it. I don't know that it should, but it could be isolating, because a lot of people still are just in denial, or they don't believe it, or they put it in the back of their minds, and they're not bothered by it. The more you're into the science of it, or like for me, I went to school and have a degree in environmental science, and I worked as a science teacher, things like that. So you can't deny it. You can't just forget about it, really. Uh, so this, and like I said, I feel like that now that I've been becoming a doomer, and I don't want to be a doomer. It's I don't think it's a rational way of looking at the world. Now, so this is what the show's about. This is not a hopium, quote unquote, show, really. It's a show about, I want to talk about looking at things differently, just looking at it differently, right? And that's kind of a spiritual thing. So that's what I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to, I hope to make this show a little coherent. It's been a long time since I made a show, and it's not planned out too much, but I hope you can bear with me because I want to talk about confirmation bias, which is what a lot of us do, and I want to talk about how you can not do that. Um, and then I want to talk about kind of the future, the outlook of the future, and some opposing viewpoints. Just touch on some of those, and some of the things that I've done that have balanced me out and made me just a more optimistic, I guess, or not as scared and fearful of the future and what's going to happen, and a more Taoist type view of it. And but so that's what this show is about: is living with climate change and not going crazy over it. And I'm not saying that an extreme weather event where it's affecting people right now. I know, of course, I know that. But even if it is, anyway. Okay, so confirmation bias. Now, this has become a serious problem in the world. Uh, because most people do this, and now if you use the internet, they have algorithms, that are doing this. Whatever it's almost like these Google and Facebook, all these. So they have algorithms that are giving you info that I'm sure you know this. That whatever you're interested in, they they get you to read or look at more of that, of the same type of stuff. So I mean, that's the first thing, that's built in, and maybe you have friends that believe the same way you do, right? And it's a natural egoic thing to you want to. We like extremes, right? I think that's my understanding of the way people are. They seem to like to get excited and extreme. And obviously, we can see in the world of this extremism. Now, most of it, maybe that's just because it's in the media. They only put things that are extreme in the media. That's partly true also. But we've seen in the United States, the, the politics, and that's not, that's real. That the politics are so divided. Um, the Democrats and the Republicans used to be very similar not that long ago. Pre-Reagan, the two parties were not as extreme. They got along much better and governed a different way. Anyway, so confirmation bias. Now, I'm just saying that to be aware of that and to break it. Don't. And how do you do that? start reading things or watching videos or podcasts or things that oppose your views, or watch debates of opposing views. Don't just constantly confirm what you think and believe, especially with climate change and the future. Uh, that is, if this is making you become a doomer, and not that it's doomer in the worst sense of the way, that you just give up hope and you're depressed and you're isolated from the world, and that's not, that's just not a healthy way to live. And I don't think it's, like I said, I don't think that's a very rational way to look at the world. Now I found, and again, I found myself falling into that. Not to say that it's isn't a serious problem. Okay, now how do we live in this way? Well, that's what I'm trying to work out myself, and I'm trying to share and talk about it. Now, so this is one thing I've done. I've been listening to just some podcasts from intellectuals that are a little more to the right of my views. I'm kind of a center left person, I guess, but I'm an individual, and I don't like being part of groups. And I was an independent, politically independent, since I was a teenager in America. And so I'm an individual, and I don't like being part of a tribe, really. Uh, but anyway, so this is one thing. So I read Bill Gates's book about his, and he's a very optimistic person about strategies for the future, about climate change, right? I listened to this podcast about a new book that I'm going to talk about. Apocalypse Never is the name of the book, and I'll read a little bit about that. But I haven't read the book, but I listened to a podcast with uh, Jordan Peterson and this guy that wrote it, uh, Michael Schellenberger. It's called Apocalypse Never: Why Environmental Alarmism Hurts Us All. Okay? Uh, Now, I haven't read it, but like I said, I listened to an hour and a half podcast for these two guys that were supposed to be talking about the book. Now, this Michael Schellenberger has been fighting for a greener planet for decades. So he's a smart guy, and he's been in an activism for a long time, but uh, and he's a proponent of nuclear power and things like that. But I guess he's gone through a transformation, and let's see, what else does he say? Okay, all right. But in 2019, as some claimed, billions of people are going to die, contributing to rising anxiety, including among adolescents. Schellenberger decided that, as a lifelong environmental activist, leading energy expert, and father of a teenage daughter, he needed to speak out and separate science from fiction. Okay, so that's kind of what the book is about, and I'm not sure that he's done it very well, but uh, what does he? He's just saying to not. Uh, let me read some more of this. Despite decades of news media attention, many remain ignorant of basic facts. Carbon emissions peaked and have been declining in most developed nations for over a decade. Okay, what about the rest of the world? You see, deaths from the extreme weather, even in poor nations, declined 80% over the last 4 decades. Okay, now that's deaths. That's not that doesn't include infrastructure damage and people losing their homes and stuff because we know when these extreme weather events are coming and we prepare for them now. So it's true that a lot of people don't get killed, but they're devastating to our lives. So anyway, that's I don't think anybody ever said that the weather is going to kill everybody. Uh, so see, you need balance in even this. Yeah, they're saying that there's a slowing population growth, abundant natural gas. Um, anyway, I listened to the podcast. Made me not want to read the book because they just weren't very convincing, and they were just kind of talking about political things and just obvious stuff like this idea of going back to nature and the good old days. They were saying that that's not. He was from a farm and it was manual labor and it was terrible, and there were no good old days, and people want to go to cities and live and in developing countries they want to do that, and they don't, and things are so much better now than they were, and that is there is some truth to that. um, so that's one thing that you can get from this is that I mean things are good, things are a lot better than they used to be, I think, with the internet, and poverty has gone down, and food production and all these things. Yes, we know that it's gotten better for people, but it's not gotten better for the natural world and the resources and the other animals and insects. Okay, that's one thing that even in this book you have extremism that is it doesn't seem very balanced. Another thing that he said was that we are not in the sixth mass. There hasn't been a sixth mass extinction. That is a simply not true. Okay, this is when I lost interest in this guy and his book. Um, and he says because a mass extinction is 75% of the species go extinct. I don't know what. This was just so stupid that I was just didn't know what to even think of it. No one has said that there has been a sixth mass extinction, that 75% of the species have gone extinct. It's they have said that are in the sixth mass extinction. That means that there's a rapid extinction rate of plants and animals that is, my estimates, 1,000 to 10,000 faster than normal. Now he didn't even mention that. So I don't know what in the world he's thinking. Anyone I'm from a small town. Anybody knows that, especially insects and things are disappearing. You can see it. Um, so that's just simply kind of disturbing that these two intelligent guys would just say that and leave it at that. But I don't know what the. And so, anyway, this you might sound like you might think that I'm just making more reason to be an alarmist and a doomer. um, but there are bits of things in there of truth. The point is that if you read something like that, it will change your perspective a little bit. There'll be some things in it that will help you. You see some things that are probably not true, but some things are a little bit true. Uh, anyway, that's one thing. Um, now, another thing I did was I studied I studied theoretical physics. I read a book by Brian Greene about quantum physics, quantum physics, yeah, and the theory of relativity and things like that. And that is so mind expanding that it can help you uh, break out of. It just can open up your mind about the world, about the universe, how little we know, uh, how small we are, yet we're part of this incredible cosmos. So these things now, and I studied that for a few weeks, and it helped me. It helped with this climate trauma stuff. Okay, that's another thing that you can do. Um, and I think that, and also I've been listening to Sam Harris and some of his people like that are quite intellectuals, and they talk about all kinds of things. Um, just like anyway, that I'll leave it at that. But the point is to break this confirmation bias. Don't just read the same stuff that confirms everything you think, day in, day out, over and over and over, and get depressed and worry about it so much. That's kind of the point, and so I hope that I'm giving you some ideas. Just look at the other views of it. Uh, what else? Yeah, I mean, just what else is optimistic about the world? Well, I think this new space. Uh, um what's his name? This James Webb Space Telescope they put up in the just recently. That's an amazing thing. You have space travel, commercial space travel, things like that. And I think if you look at technology, it's quite amazing what we are learning, how much we're advancing on things. They're called futurists, what's it called? Uh, Transhumanism. I mean, these are people that think that we'll be able to live forever. I mean, these think that they will be able to replenish cells and things like that. And um, now I don't know that that's true, but it's amazing that how far we've come. Okay, that's another thing. I watched a video. It was called "Where Humans Came From." It was on YouTube. I think it was 45 minutes, and it starts from the first cell in the ocean, and it goes through. We became a fish. We came from a fish onto land, into primates, and I just things like that. Watch that and get a view of where we've come from. It's quite amazing. Um, I just these things help. They help me. I don't know if they'll help you or not. So why do they help me? Well, it just it it reinforces that what my philosophy of this, like this Taoism is my favorite, that we just don't know. We don't know a lot. When you think you know something, you don't know it. That's the nature of this cosmos that is just miraculously complex. And I think that's something to be not depressed about. Um, so my point is that these things can balance you out. Now you can look at alternative views and say that a lot of it's wrong, which some of it is. But this is the strategy. I hope that you understand the strategy of stop doing confirmation bias and look at it from different directions. Doesn't mean to stop activism or anything else. It's quite the opposite. We need to act on climate change as much as we can. And it is a very serious thing. But there's different views on overpopulation, on geoengineering, all kinds of different views that I think will help you just to not go into this extreme view like a doomer and just say it's absolutely hopeless. There's no chance for anything. Uh, so that's probably enough for today for my little show. I hope I was able to point out my point of view on this. That's something that will help. You know, there's a range, the view of the environmental problems or the environment. It's from a textbook I was using to tutor somebody in environmental science. I maybe talk about this at a different, but there's these different environmental philosophies of the world, right? So on the far left would be what's called a deep ecologist. Okay, so that's somebody that, let's see if I can find that. They put more value on nature than humanity, right? They believe in bio rights, universal rights where all species and ecosystems have an inherent value and humans have no right to interfere with this. Deep ecologists would like policies to be altered to reduce our impact on the environment, which includes a decrease in human population and consuming less. Deep ecology is not an eco-religion, but a set of guidelines and values to help us think about our relationships with the earth and our obligations towards it. So that's now on the far right are the cornucopians. Now, these are people who see the world as having infinite resources to benefit humanity. Cornucopians think that through technology and our inventiveness, we can solve any environmental problem and continually improve our living standards. For them, it is growth that will provide the answers and wealth to improve the lot of all, and nothing should stand in the way of this. This paradigm sees a free market economy, capitalism with minimal government control or interference, as the best way to manage market and the planet. So you can see that, and that's almost what the world is, really, as a cornucopian world. There are environmental regulations, but they're broken all the time. And so these are the extremes, and I think that a lot of us are in the middle. But I might talk about this. So this is the difficulty of a world that people believe that have different philosophies, and we all have to work together. But technology is quite powerful, and the regenerative power of nature is incredible too. So these things, it just opens up your mind, and it helps to not become too overwhelmed with the negative implications that we hear and that we see through the weather events and the disappearing of other species and things like that is a problem. But look at it in the context of the evolution of humans and the cosmos, and where we are and who we are. And I think that you won't become a bitter doomer. That's what, and you don't give up. And anyway, this is just one. This could go on and on and on talking about this. But today's message is, I hope it's just simply a message about what this is, what this Doomerism is, and to try to not fall into that. And your strategies are address confirmation bias and listen to other people's views of it, and don't get in a tribal state of not listening to other people's views of it. And then ground yourself in where we've come from and what we are, and the possibilities of the future, and the fact that we just don't know what's going to happen, and most projections are always wrong. I'm not saying that the warming of the planet is going to change the planet very seriously, but that's just what's going to happen. So we're just going to have to go with it. That's what is going to happen, and we can only adapt to it the best we can, and to hope that there won't be extreme suffering of people. And anyway, that's the armor you put on and go out into the world and live with. That's what I'm doing. So I hope today's talk you might have got something from it and a different way of thinking about the climate change. Okay, well, that's the show for today about doomerism and what you can do about it if you want to not be a doomer. Uh, Hopefully, this will help you a little bit. It's helped me. So, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time on Living with Climate Change. Bye.